Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Bonjour, hello, welcome everyone to the Ontario NEIHR monthly webinar series. Um, I am joined here today by our guest speaker, Mike Auksi, and our knowledge keeper, Clayton Shirt. So I will pass it over to you, Clay, to do our spiritual opening before we begin. Miigwech, Clay, for your opening. So for those of you who just joined us, welcome to this month's installment of the Ontario NEIHR monthly webinar series. So today we have guest speaker Mike Auksi, who will be speaking about the origins and contemporary climate of Indigenous education and sport in Canada. So we're very excited to have you here today. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping items. So just so you note, this webinar is recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel. So you can go ahead and share that with your networks. And we will have some time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. So please use the Q&A feature as the chat is disabled. And with that, I will pass it over to Mike.
All right. Thank you so much, Clay, Shanti, for the opening and teeing things up. I guess the first thing I'll begin with is trying to engage the old share screen. So if I'm okay. Yeah, we'll get right into it, I guess. So just gonna minimize folks for now. That's coming through okay?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, yeah, and it looks like it's going to work for me today. Great. So, the title of my talk today is The Time Traveler, Historical and Contemporary Understandings of Indigenous Education and Physical Health Determinants. It's less academic and more story-based. Story as research, ceremony as research is something that I'm very passionate about. And I don't compromise for my part what I know and what I've observed and what I hope to learn. Yeah, a lot of photos and stories is what we're in store for today. So I hope you like it. I stitched together my slides myself and it took a long time, but it was a really wonderful active process. I guess that was kind of the point. I didn't just want to do another slideshow. Just to get it over with, so to speak. Anyways, I quite enjoyed that. So anyways, yeah, I'm a doctoral candidate at McGill University in the Faculty of Education in the Department of Physical Health and Education, and currently working as a research assistant right here at Waakabaness Institute for Indigenous Health, Dalalana School of Public Health. Big thanks to the Quebec NEIHR, which is the network environments for, the Quebec iteration of the Ontario NEIHR, of course, who've been wonderful supporters of mine, along with Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. That small hockey logo there is the Indigenous Hockey Research Network, and it's a collection of wonderful colleagues and friends and scholars doing really excellent work. Decolonizing hockey, decolonizing Canada, one story, one step at a time. Quite special. And yeah, and shout out to McGill as well. But yes, I definitely am going to be keeping an eye on the time. So I'll start my little timer. Yeah, so just cruising along. Oh yeah, and that's a nice shot of Mount Royal. Very prominent in my life, or at least it was for 5 years. For reasons that I'll get into as the talk goes along. And that's the rink on the campus, downtown campus of McGill. Really cool places. And I was lucky that our department was at the foot of Mount Royal, right by Percival Molson Football Stadium. Some guy named Mike. I titled that slide based on a dream my dad had, where he dreamed of me working in the city with youth and things like that. And everyone was just like, hey, I'm looking for a basketball program. Hey, go talk to some guy named Mike. Yeah, he'll help you out. Hey, I need some tokens. I got to get to a meeting with my counselor other end of town. And some guy named Mike, he walks around with a hockey sweater all the time. And that's why I called this slide that. Yeah, so I did my bachelor and master's at TMU, and I broke into university through an access program called the Transitional Year Program way back in 04, 05. And that was for someone who really battled in high school as at the time, undiagnosed neurodivergent ADHD person. Um, it was just wonderful in terms of like a non-Eurocentric curriculum for the first time was very special to me. And I was practicing with the varsity blues hockey team. So it was like climbing back into the fold academically and athletically. A really nice kind of gave me the structure that I really thrived under, and I'm actually trying to recreate now. That's like the iconic photo of my dad and I, 2002, the first year I traveled to Sioux Lookout. Yeah, it's just so long ago. It's insane. It's wild. Lovely photo from the Group H Olympic qualifying. That's me, dead center, under the screen. We got scored on after that, and we didn't make the Olympics, but 8,000 fans in Laszlo Papp Arena, Budapest, and that is Team Hungary there. And that was my last International Ice Hockey Federation tournament event. And that's me picking Weekend Bitterroot in Lac Seul. And I don't even remember the year. I want to say it was like 2008, maybe. I got a U of T hat, so it kind of been as recent as my memory. But anyways, yeah, got to play hockey in Europe, Czechia, Estonia. Yeah, and NBHT, that little acronym there is the Northern Bands Hockey Tournament, which used to take place in Sioux Lookout, and it's a prominent part of my study, which I'll get to in a sec. At a glance, I'll chat about my Lac Seul hockey study, Pelican Lake Indian Residential School, snowshoeing, lacrosse, Montreal Amateur Athletic Association, briefly about amateurism in sport, and then we'll sort of transtemporally shift to modern education access points, all Indigenous sport gatherings, land-based learning, a concept called digital minimalism, and then just some closing thoughts and thank yous, of course. The majority of the black and white photos are from the National Anglican Archives. I've followed in sort of the footsteps of Dr. Janice Forsyth, who's published and researched extensively, a team that's very close to my study, the first period of my study. So these photos are of the 1951 Sioux Lookout Blackhawks. I think that photo is actually they don't have all the dates right, but I think it would have been at least 50 or 51, because this special team, which I'll speak about more depth, they became elite in hockey within 2 years, which is actually really remarkable. And based on early findings and chats I've had with folks, is that the kids that grew up like land-based life and learning, those kinds of physical upbringings and foundations loan themselves well to Euro-Canadian sport and modern sport for the folks that had a chance to do so at some of the residential schools. So yeah, cruising along. I just started year 6 of my PhD. We're tentatively titling it Indians Do Cry, Storing Ice Hockey from Lac Seul First Nation. That's an ode to my father's book of short stories and poems called Indians Do Cry, originally published in '77. And we're working on a graphic novel about my dad's hockey playing years at Pelican in the '60s. But it's actually become kind of a father-son story, right? Like it's just hockey's very intergenerational. It's very community focused. It's inter-nation gatherings in the sense that communities come together to put on wonderful ice spectacles for the fans and our families. So we'll get into all that. Um, when I did the ethics for my study to begin interviews, I realized like places were important in the sense of like, okay, Laxal First Nation, where a lot of like folks grew up. Sioux Lookout, the hub town of northwestern Ontario. It's kind of tucked in between Winnipeg and Thunder Bay. And people usually know or don't know Sioux Lookout, kind of based on if they have connections to it or if they would have taken the number one or two train that goes from Toronto to Vancouver. It's actually, I think, the easiest way to get to Sioux Lookout. It's 27 hours, but if you book at the right time, it's like $200, $300 with a sleeper, shower access, and food. And there's no Wi-Fi, so you can actually disconnect from our little devices, which I'll also get to. But yeah, period one starts around 1948, and it's sort of like I refer to it as the ironic hockey creation story, and that's organized hockey of Lac Seul because it our hockey creation story, organized hockey creation story begins with tryouts at Pelican Lake Indian Residential School. And that photo in the top right there is probably from like 1948, 49. I think the caption was like, they just beat the Bruins. And so they might have been playing a local Pee Wee team because 2 years later, when they were Bantam, around 15 years of age, they traveled to Southern Ontario. I'll chat about that briefly. So, anyways, the 48 to 70 were the Pelican and Sioux Lookout Blackhawks years. Obviously, residential school. Um, the hockey team there, and then on September 1st, 1968, Pelican became part of the Federal Indian Day School program, um, which meant that the kids could like go home like after in the weekdays and on weekends. Like it wasn't like they were just completely severed from community and family and traditional life, right? So that was a big deal. And the photo denoting the second period, which spans from 70 to 99, is the championship winning Lac Seul Tomahawks from 1985. And the goalie in the middle there, it's wild because he looks like exactly like his son, my buddy Ryan, who I got to win a couple tournaments with too. So it's extra special for sure. I mean, I can see folks who are coaching and folks whose sons I've become very close with. So it really is very special to be able to tell some of these stories. Third period, I have excuse me, the second period, the two key tenets of the second period for my study has to do with the school transitioning to the day school program, which opened up the athlete development pathways to access Sioux Lookout Minor Hockey Association. And the photo in the middle is from the 1968-69 Queen Elizabeth Warriors hockey team, and that's my dad on the bottom right with the little arrow, and it's like he was a great player, like he would have had to have been quite good to play on the local settler high school team, right? And he was an excellent athlete based on again his upbringing on the trap line and things to that effect. So I had to squeeze that in. I ran out of room. I had to restitch my slides here, but yeah, cruise it. So the other thing that happened, excuse me, in the second period was in the late 70s, there was the inaugural Northern Bands hockey tournament, and Lac Seul was there, Fort Hope was there, and they were the first all Indigenous hockey tournaments in the region of northwestern Ontario. And I mean, 38 teams this year. There's usually about 40 teams, and it runs every March break. So it's pretty it's real special for sure. Um, Temporally, again, the third period runs from 2000 to the present, and I have it sort of denoted as an era where we skate in two worlds. I came to the First Nations hockey scene a little later. I was already 20 by then, but it was the turning point in my life, that 2002 photo with my dad, to get out of the city, to get sober, connect with my Anishinaabe heritage, and um, and play hockey and feel good about myself again, right? That was a pivotal February, March, April 2002, and then getting into university a couple years later. But I I traveled to Suluk to play in the tournament in 2023, 2024, 2025. And I didn't want necessarily to play and to compete because I've kind of been trying to sometimes an athlete when they're done competing, that's the last thing you want to do. But I figured, well, I got to do these interviews. I got to get this third piece of paper. So let's just do it and do it. Lost in the finals to Bearskin First Nation, the Mavericks. Lost in the quarterfinals, 2024 to the Mavericks again. They didn't have as strong a team this year, but we won for my last one, and that's the photo there. So extra special, and I didn't expect to spend this much time on this slide. Yeah, so that's pictures can tell stories. And the quote there, we were the Montreal Canadiens of the North, and that is from one of my participants here, that they were fantastic hockey teams, going toe to toe with teams from local Red Lake, Dryden. Yeah, yeah, hockey was special for those fortunate to have a chance um, to play. So Pelican Lake Indian Residential School, Pelican, as folks tend to call it, established in 1926. Was the closest to Lac Seul and Sioux Lookout, but that didn't mean they still didn't send kids to like Shingwalk, like Sault Ste. Marie. Like my dad, I believe, started at Pelican, then spent time in Shingwalk, and then literally ran away by train at 11 years old to come back to the nearby town of Hudson. So it's really intense, I guess, is the way to say it. But and as I mentioned earlier, it became a federal Indian Day School program on September 1st, 1968. With regards to like the connections between modern sport, organized sport, Euro-Canadian sport, and physical culture, we see these cadet programs, right? And they were happening too in and around Brantford. I think it was the Mohawk Institute, and these are like part of that assimilationist agenda of the schools. Um, and I think the distinction between like sport for sport's sake, sport as game, sport as competition, and physical culture lies in physical culture has an aspect that's either economic or political or this concept, it might have this concept of like cultural power. So in the sense that like, well, the cultural power here would be like it is assimilating these boys into like settler Canadians, into settler society. So that's a theme that I touch on a little bit on some of the other slides. But the bottom left pick, it really captures that kind of like the overcrowding of the schools. Like they were like clearly they were chronically underfunded. There was like pulmonary health issues and outcomes. Um, I have archival photos of like, boys working like manual labor, driving tractors, and all my aunties say that they were being trained for subservient roles as maids and things like to that effect, that like, prescribed gender roles historically has kind of been a thing, but then the girls wouldn't have had as nearly a fraction of the chance to compete or to play games and play sports. So that I'm certainly aware of. The photo on the bottom right is the 1951 Sioux Lookout Blackhawks, which was they weren't all from there was a bunch from Lac Seul on that team, about five people. Meeting the what is it, the retired Reverend Robert Jefferson, congratulating the Blackhawks, 1951. Okay, but the work that Janice Forsyth, um, uh, Adriana Giancarlo. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, her name's escaping me right now. But Taylor McKee, some of my friends, they've done some digging to like identify photos such as this as somewhat staged, right? So it's kind of like, hey, everybody look at the Reverend and like smile and that. And so in some slides in previous talks, I sort of like I'll present this juxtaposition of like that is a candid photo, that is a staged photo, and it's clear as day. And that's because this 1951 Blackhawks team was, and there'll be more photos of them in a bit that are pretty cool, but they were rewarded with a trip to play like the Ottawa East Bears and the Toronto Shopsies Pee-wees, um, to showcase the success of the residential school system. They're being trained to use cutlery in a civilized manner on the train ride that I take too, to go back and forth from Toronto to Sioux Lookout. So it's it's reality. Um, but one of the stories that one of the players, my buddy's dad, told me when I got a chance, I was fortunate to interview him. He said, "Yeah, it was so fun. Looking back on it, you're like, that's what was going on." But they were kids, right? And they were good. And he said that the folks working in the dining cart were so generous as to give them their tip money so that the boys could get pops and chips and candy and stuff like that. That like I make a point of sharing that story when I'm on the train because that kind of generosity goes a long way. Makes you want to cry. um, the Abenaki snowshoe and Haudenosaunee lacrosse, and so basically, I sort of traced back like British appropriation of the Abenaki snowshoe to the Third Abenaki Wars in the early 18th century or early 1700s. That the Brits, that was the only way that they could sort of, you know, um, traverse the wintry conditions of the northeastern part of the United States now. Um, yeah, and that's significant because as later I'll mention the Montreal Snowshoe Club, like in the Montreal Amateur Athletic Association, the snowshoe and lacrosse play prominent roles in that. So it's interesting to track the roots of physical culture in this case and the evolution of modern sport in Canada. Oh yeah, and the second point I made was just that here is that the National Lacrosse Association was established in 1967, coinciding with Confederation. And the whole of like sport in Canada was like, and why I believe that hockey became like our kind of unofficial, official national sport, is it was something that we could best the Americans at. It was something that was separating us from the monarchy, Britain, of course, and it had like, we are like the masters of the cold, harsh, wintry climates, and there's a whole incredible history with First Peoples and the Coureurs de Bois and the Voyageurs and things like that, where relationships were not, they were mutually effective. And, I could go on about that, but, and then the photo here, pardon me for it being a bit grainy, is the old snowshoe hut of the old Montreal Snowshoe Club, and it's kind of like that First Nations folks would never have been welcome to that club back then. There is something nice about walking in the mountain in my spikes, walking in my snowshoes as I am on the right there, and it's like, oh, it's mine. And it's not that I'm saying it's mine. It's just saying that like no one owns or belongs to this mountain. Like it's for all of us, right? And we take care of it. And it became my favorite place in the world. Particularly during COVID, right? Like that, we all had to kind of find ways to keep active and connect with nature if we were so fortunate. Um, the Montreal Amateur Athletic Association, just south of Sherbrooke on the west side of Peel, um, the unionization of the Montreal Lacrosse Club, Montreal Snowshoe Club, and Montreal Bicycle Club occurred in 1877. 4 years later, in 1881, the MAAA is founded. Now, the issue then was, and I get into it a bit with the amateurism piece in the next slide. I'll just save that for a sec, if I may. Quick time check. We're cruising along, aren't we? Um, I call the bottom right photo the sort of like settler petroglyphs, right? It's a carving of the Montreal Lacrosse Club. So on the one side, it's reaffirming of the appropriation of the Haudenosaunee game of lacrosse, but it also serves as that reminder of like, hey, I don't know. For me, that's how I see it, kind of two ways. And that's just a photo of the modern gym on the left with the old Victoria skating rink at Drummond and Rene Levesque, my old street. I really got to cruise now because I want to hear from folks for sure and have some chats, and I got lots to get to. Um, the one of the earliest definitions of amateurism in Canadian sport was that you mustn't have ever played, like, in order to be considered an amateur, was you must never have competed for money, earned money as a livelihood, like say for like if you coached or trained someone, right? It was this whole um, it was a morality issue. But critically, or you must not have been a laborer, you get that class issue, or an Indian, right? The race and racism and exclusionary practices. Then if you check the winter carnivals of the 1880s, right? It's like it's super colonial. I mean, what American flag, French flag, I think that's a British flag. That the first peoples were painted with like war paint and feathered as parading in the snowshoe kind of races, like races, actual competitions, um, not allowed to compete because they were the best. So this was the image that Canada was portraying to the world. So I'm highly critical of it, but I mean, it's just it's a tough history, clearly, and it actually impacts like today's sort of context of belongingness in sport. So that's the issue. Jim Thorpe, one of my heroes, and he relates to the sort of, I call it like the fallacy of amateurism in sport, because um, he had his gold medal stripped. This is him from the 19, I think it was 1912 Stockholm Olympics. He won a couple gold medals, and they took his medals away because he played some minor league baseball in the summertime in the off season and might have got a couple bucks for some food, probably not a lot. That his medals were restored to him posthumously following his passing. So I don't know. I just think he's fantastic. And Jim Thorpe, original All-American by Joseph Bruchac, is a highly recommended book, ghostwritten by a family friend. We're going to sort of shift here to modern education access. And I don't want to glaze over this, but I will, just to sort of, again, I want to hear from folks following my little part here. Um, I never finished high school. I just undiagnosed ADHD, neurodivergence. I didn't know how to start anything or organize anything, keep a planner, things I battle today. But that old transitional year program building, St. George, south of Harvard, north of college, I mean, it changed everything. It was like like the last 2 years of high school in a year, and it was super intense, but I was just ready to go, right? And my original intention was to juxtapose the old Pelican residential school with the new one, because on the top right is the new Pelican Falls High School on the same sort of peninsula, uh, surrounded by Pelican Lake itself. Um, yeah, and kids come from the north, to get sort of their education, which of course indicates that in community schooling is still so chronically underfunded that the best chance for kids to pursue post-secondary is to leave communities. So it's very um, complex, and there's still that separation aspect that was even happening in the residential school years. The bottom right is Dennis Franklin Cromartie, the arena. That's an all First Nations high school in Thunder Bay. So a lot of folks would head to Thunder Bay as well to pursue their education goals, dreams, and ambitions. Again, I'll go over this one pretty quick, but basically, all Indigenous sport gatherings, right? We talked about the Northern Bands hockey tournament, the one that I was competing in for Lac Seul. First one was in about 1980, 81. Little NHL, Little Native Hockey League. First one was in Waterloo, Ontario, kind of by Wiki, like Northern Ontario, not Northwestern Ontario though, in 1971. So that's quite a legacy of minor hockey, all Indigenous, all First Nations hockey. Um, the North American Indigenous Games, I was privileged to go in 2023, and I mean, talk about a gathering of nations. I mean, that was it. 2017, York University, pre-COVID-19 pandemic was fantastic. I mean, geez, you're just so happy for those kids. That's just me with an old Mi'kmaq hockey stick. Um, the Mi'kmaq were master stick makers, and were instrumental in the creation of hockey. That's a whole other discussion. But the sons of Lord Preston of Stanley were known to have played with Mi'kmaq hockey sticks. That's of course the Stanley Cup's namesake. So their sons played with Mi'kmaq hockey sticks. I loved learning about that in the one book. Land-based learning. We were fortunate to host our symposium at Wakabaness on the bottom right. Oh, that's a cool pic. It almost looks like a painting, isn't that something? um, yeah, to be of service, to be, Oshkobewas, firekeeper, helper, to focus in and put all your energy into folks that a lot of people had never partaken in a sweat lodge ceremony, some non-Indigenous, and I think that's wonderful, very special. Top right is the annex where I grew up. That's my bike lane right there. That's how I zip around the city on the city e-bike. It's a big part of my day and how I get around. The shot on the bottom left is from Mount Royal. Just a beautiful moonlit sky on a crisp winter's day. That was probably about 3 months ago by now. Yeah, so land-based learning, I'm a big proponent of. I mean, and then it's a chance to like take out the earbuds, don't listen to music, don't listen to a podcast, and just keep your phone though, in case you get in a jam, you might have to make a phone call. Um, yeah, okay, so 19 minutes to the top of the hour, so I'm somehow actually kind of on time. Wonderful. And I hope folks are enjoying the talk. I I saw somewhere that like Halle Berry was filming a movie in Montreal, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." So then I looked up on Instagram, like, what's Halle Berry doing? What's she up to? And one of her posts featured this book. It was actually super serendipitous in many ways. How to Break Up with Your Phone. Not super scientific. Journalist Catherine Price wrote this little book that to sort of explain what happens with like cell phone addiction, social media addiction, whatever. Probably everyone has an issue with it at some point. We all use technology. I'd argue somewhat primitively, but whatever. It's a very personal thing. Anyways, started learning about that, started learning about dopamine addiction, the cycle of unearned dopamine in a sense. So if I'm trying to sleep at night, but I take 2 hours to fiddle around with my phone, listen to YouTube things, that's sort of like that unearned dopamine as opposed to like going for a quick jog around the block with no technology, or last 3 weeks charging my phone in my mom's kitchen downstairs. I fall asleep right away now and things are a lot better, but it's still a struggle. Okay, and then the other book there, Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. Very interesting book. And I think digital minimalism is going to become my life's work. I do think it applies to public health as a screaming yeah, just issue. It's at epidemic proportions. And the last thing I'll say is that the really cool thing is that there's not a lot of things that reset as quickly, per my last point here, is that it doesn't take long. Like if we were to charge your phone and like downstairs, like no phone or laptop in your bedroom, for instance, for me, first 4 days, tossing and turning for 4 hours, sleep for 4 hours, but I'm still rested just by virtue of not having my tech there. And then five, six, seven at 1 week, it resets very, very quickly. And not walking around with earbuds in all the time, opening yourself up to the world. That's I'm just very passionate about it, and I'm still putting the pieces together. And that's it. Huge thanks to everyone. So happy to be back at Wakabaness, Bryce. That's it for now. I'll stop my share, and I guess I did have a little reference list here. Shout out Zotero. That didn't take long to put together at all. But thanks very much. Look forward to some questions and discussion.
Which Mike? We'll open it up here to questions. Feel free to use the Q&A chat. I really liked the slides that you created.
Sweet. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was actually a lot of fun. Yeah. Appreciate that. And when I get jammed up with like writing or data analysis, what I'll tend to do is like literally I'll just grab a big table and I'll start cutting different nodes of information or shift things around because on the screen, when you're just like, I'm only looking
Yeah.
at this paragraph here and I need to get up and move. Um, and yeah, I just it was a fun process and putting the little you know papers onto the turquoise paper from the office here was really felt like I was a grade 8 science project again.
Yeah, no, but that's awesome. I think it's a good way to kind of shift your perspective. Um,
Mhm.
it it looks like we have some questions coming in. Um, let's see. It says, how do you think Indigenous teachings or teachings about Indigenous health have informed your journey with hockey and now your PhD and your digital detox?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Sabina. Yeah, I mean, the thing is like I literally like I grew up like in the annex, like with at my mom's house, and I didn't gravitate to like say like the Native Center, which was right there because home was right there. And so again, it was like it kind of come down to that transitional year program, oh 04. I'm still what, 22 years old, and like
Yeah.
working with like Eileen Antone, like my first teacher. Yeah, they were huge. Because hockey connecting me to the north and family and cousins and all that. I guess it's somewhat ironic to like your first teacher like to be at the University of Toronto, but that's fine. And it's all good, right? Like later traveling to Estonia and connecting with, where my mom's from and playing hockey out there. Like it's just I'm just very fortunate in every way to do that. And yeah, I mean the whole digital detox thing too is like I was slapping together the slides. Like I had all these photos. It took 2 hours this morning. I didn't think it was going to take that long. And I'm listening to like music, like, whatever, which is vastly different than listening to some random, content creators YouTube channel, right? So everybody's digital detox or minimalism is going to look different, but it just has to be like a pretty like hard stop because you're just going to revert to what you were doing before anyways. And so it ain't easy. It really isn't easy. The phone still like calls me like, and if you're at the gym and you're doing workouts and you're checking your phone between sets and stuff like that, like everyone does, I'm not judging, but and I did it last night. I got sort of jammed up, but when I got home, it was phone off and like to bed, like so
Yeah.
I'm getting there, but I'm just really enjoying learning and intending to share what I learn uh, widely.
Yeah, Miigwech. Yeah, I agree. I know I notice a difference when I am like, you know, eating, for example, and like checking my phone or something, then you're not, as present and like, really kind of appreciating the meal you're having and like tasting different flavors and stuff like that, right? So,
Hmm. I'm seeing one, I guess, is if I'm not mistaken.
yeah.
Is that sport policies for Indigenous people across Canada? Oh,
Oh,
in
I'm
terms of
sorry. I
sports,
missed.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, there's the What are some of the things you would like to see in policies for Indigenous peoples across Canada? Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a fantastic question. I mean, the thing with me is like, I played sports. I'm a product of the institution of sport, and I believe in sport. Um, but sometimes it's just like, hey, like make it to the pros and win. Like sports these days are just like participation trophies for everyone. It's like, so what? Like everyone just have a good time. Like the best of the best are gonna become the best, and but we lose sight so much. But that's sort of an aside. And I guess with regards to like policies and stuff, I really just wish that like Indigenous sport organizations were kind of better funded because sometimes you get like the non-Indigenous sport agencies and they're literally taking money from like actual like that the ones in the most need that don't have the opportunities to do some of the lovely like the opportunities that sport can offer. Um, to this day, it breaks my heart that hockey's so expensive and inaccessible. Um, I don't know. And just generally, I just wish sport would somehow we could make it less privatized, make it more unstructured, make it more community based, right? Like kids don't like play in parks anymore and stuff. That's related to like video games, online video games, Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty. There's nothing wrong with like video games, but like as soon as they introduced the online factor, it just really was like you have to be there at that time. You can't leave. And then there's like gambling aspects to it with the hockey games where it's like, oh yeah, like buy this little like a special player. And so it's just they're taking their money and it's like I could go on and on, but I don't vilify video games, but you do got to take control and go outside. Yeah, you just do. um, and the what was really cool, and I was fortunate, was how I kind of started piecing together like the history of sport, in Canada was through TAing a course taught by my supervisor, Jordan Cook. So I didn't mention yet in the slides, who's just been wonderful for all these years. That it was historical perspectives in sport and physical education in Canada, and it just was like super eye opening. Um, yeah, and just thinking about what I'm gonna do active later. Something.
Yeah, so you're saying that it would be great if there was increased access to funding for Indigenous sports agencies. Is that rather than non-Indigenous
Yeah, like that's one
organizations?
example for
Yeah,
sure. But I
yeah,
mean, like sometimes too, it's just like for the communities that are like, much more remote, they're at already such a disadvantage for like
yeah,
pursuing, high performance sport, elite amateur sport, that from a potential perspective, they might have some of the greatest athletes that never are able to get that opportunity. And for many of the Indigenous players, like I'm not the I'm like urban Toronto, Anishinaabe Estonian person, but for the ones that go from like far communities, they might leave their parents' place even as early as like 10, 11, 12, just to play like the double A, triple A hockey. And those kinds of themes are most prominent, obviously, in the third period, that modern era of the sort of climate of Indigenous First Nations hockey, right? But the window is very small. It's smaller for Indigenous hockey players to quote unquote make it, and just because
yeah,
access would
yeah.
be the big one.
Okay. And then lastly, Liam is asking, how do you feel about the future of hockey within your community?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, Laxwell's always been a very strong um, team in the Northern Bands. We've won the most tournaments, which is wonderful, obviously. We have a rink in our community, the Lac Event Center. And at the same time, it's kind of like the amount of, you know, the money, the financial resources, and parental, sacrifice and commitments. It does make it harder, and yeah, I really don't know. And it's weird because like I never gravitated to like work towards coaching and stuff like that. Quite frankly, I'd rather do programming that was like maybe more land-based, maybe whatever it was, but it wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, who's the next like university college pro player? Like I just want to like work with everyone
Yeah.
because I don't know, it's just more wide reaching and like that the gift of being active, like teaching people how to like understand their bodies. Like if you're doing interval training and you run out of breath, it's okay. It's going to come back. You can work up to it. Paired that with the digital minimalism, and you could literally change the world. So I think
Right.
that's something I want to do.
Cool. Well, it looks like we have another question here. So I'll read that out quickly. We still have a few more minutes. What was a significant theme that you encountered from community members in your research that was related to their holistic health, from people with um, disabled communities, LGBTQ to S plus, elders, youth, etc., and sports?
I'm just trying to wrap my head around the question.
Yeah.
So, if theme encountered holistic health.
Theme.
Um, yeah, like so I think that like certainly just from like starting like from like a gendered lens, we know that young girls and young women have had like far, far less opportunities to play hockey, sports like hockey. Some communities, it's almost gendered too, where it's just like, oh, the boys might be doing hockey and the girls would be more funneled towards like broom ball and ringette and stuff like that. But Laxul, has some really fantastic female hockey players. We had two female hockey players on our team, and they are very effective and wonderful players. Um, and then if I can just the holistic health and sports aspect, I mean, I think that one of the themes coming out, there's a couple that I'll just focus on quickly. I know we're coming to time that hockey for a bunch of us was a carrot, a motivator to pursue post-secondary education. Um, so that if I'm talking to like young like athletes, and you can convince them that like doing good in school gives you more places to play if and when you do want to go to post-secondary, just as a pragmatic like career and sport pursuit opportunities. I think that hockey is important to a bunch of us with vis-a-vis um, substance use and misuse and mental health, um, times when you might be feeling down, the social aspect of it, community gathering aspects of it. But those are the thoughts that come to my mind right there. Thanks very much for your question. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Wonderful. Miigwech. And thank you everyone for your questions and input. So at this time, I'll welcome Clay back to close us out.
Love you. Thank you.
Miigwech, everyone. Mama P.